Despite claims that it has encircled Pokrovsk and that the city's fall was inevitable, Russia's forces still find themselves locked in a bloody battle. Ukraine's defenders are inflicting massive casualties on the Russian troops. Pokrovsk is a fortress. For now at least, that fortress still stands. And it may end up standing a little while longer thanks to a key change in Ukraine's approach to the city's defense. Ukraine has turned Pokrovsk into a Russian bloodbath, inflicting catastrophic losses in the process after deploying some of the country's most elite drone units. It all started when Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelenskyy began visiting the Pokrovsk front lines earlier in November. Already well aware of the danger that the city is in, Zelenskyy's visits served the dual purposes of raising morale among the city's defenders and providing him and his higher command with news from the ground in Pokrovsk. The first of these visits occurred around November 4th, according to the BBC. Photographs were posted and little information came out of the visit beyond the Ukrainian army's commander-in-chief Alexander Syrskyi rubbishing Russia's claims that its forces have encircled Pokrovsk. Still, Zelenskyy must have seen a need for him to return to the Pokrovsk combat lines. Ukraine's president headed in that direction again on November 11th. That visit came in the wake of Russia's defense ministry making several claims about its forces' exploits in the city, with DW reporting that Russia said it had cleared about 35 buildings in the town. Again, the message from Russia was clear: Pokrovsk is about to fall. Ukraine responded by claiming that it had deployed more special forces, along with weapons and equipment, to key parts of the city ready for a battle. DW said at the time that it was unclear if either statement was truthful. We would soon find out that Ukraine did exactly what it said it did. This time around, Zelenskyy also released a direct statement following his Pokrovsk visit. Or perhaps the word warning is a more accurate term. "This is our country, this is our East, and we will certainly do our utmost to keep it Ukrainian," Zelenskyy roared. And while this statement was very public, Ukraine's president and his high command had been making moves behind the scenes in Pokrovsk that would lead to a Russian bloodbath. Euromaidan Press reveals the details in a November 18th Frontline report, noting that Zelenskyy spent much of the time in Pokrovsk visiting the headquarters of Birds of Madyar. Expanded to a full brigade toward the end of 2024, the Madyar Birds are among Ukraine's elite specialists in the areas of drone warfare, electronic intelligence, and deep reconnaissance, Militani says. Before becoming a brigade, the Madyar Birds distinguished themselves by holding the line in the Battle of Bakhmut for 110 days, only leaving the city when it was given the order to withdraw. Those 100-plus days saw the Birds inflict heavy casualties on Russia's soldiers in one of the bloodiest battles of the war. And though the Madyar Birds left Bakhmut defeated, they also became much stronger in the 2.5 years that have followed their March 2023 withdrawal. It was this brigade that took most of Zelenskyy's attention during his most recent November visit to Pokrovsk. But he also spoke to others. Using the Madyar base as a makeshift headquarters for all of Ukraine's elite drone operators, Zelenskyy worked alongside Syrskyi to assemble a crack team. Joining the Birds of Madyar were Ukraine's 25th Airborne, 7th Rapid Response, and the fearsome 1st Azov Corps. According to that guy Noah, all of these units discussed what they needed to hold the lines with Zelenskyy himself. Ukraine's president listened, taking it all in. Then, having asserted that the units would be provided with what they needed, Ukraine's president prepared them all with a brutal order. Both Zelenskyy and Commander-in-Chief Syrskyi issued the same directive: finish off the Russians in Pokrovsk. And what followed proved the order had landed with absolute clarity, Euromaidan Press says. What happened next was a bloodbath that consumed many of Russia's Pokrovsk forces. The Birds of Madyar led the brutal charge against Russia. Deployed to the southern perimeter, Zelenskyy knew that he could trust this brigade to inflict maximum damage on Russia's forces. After all, it had already proven itself very capable in October. This single brigade took out about 8,000 Russian troops in and around Pokrovsk in October alone, using nothing more than the drones that have made them so famous in Ukraine and so infamous in Russia. With that feat already behind them, the Madyar Birds were given an order to patrol Pokrovsk's south, while keeping an eye out for any and all Russian attempts to reinforce their forces inside Pokrovsk from that direction. Russia does have soldiers inside Pokrovsk, around 300 or so of them, Australia's ABC News reported on November 17th. However, those soldiers haven't entered Pokrovsk as part of massive mechanized assaults, the likes of which Ukraine has seen in Bakhmut and elsewhere during the war. Russia's soldiers are infiltrating. They're creeping past Ukraine's defenses in tiny units, allowing them to penetrate the combat lines and establish positions, albeit small and poorly defended ones, inside Pokrovsk itself. Euromaidan Press says that footage captured from inside Pokrovsk show that these infiltrators now often move alone, using the city's urban terrain to hide away from Ukraine's hunters. There is a logic to this type of move. A soldier operating alone could be seen as less of a threat than several working together in a group. Russia hopes that its solitary soldiers will be able to infiltrate deeper into Pokrovsk even if Ukraine spots them, because Ukraine may not want to waste a drone on a single soldier when there are bigger fish to fry. The Madyar Birds have been sent into the south of Pokrovsk to shatter these Russian illusions, and they are following their orders to the letter. Every Russian soldier must be eliminated. As Euromaidan Press says, the Madyar Birds are now tracking and destroying individual soldiers, deploying as many drones as necessary to get the job done. It doesn't matter if that soldier finds a bunker or some other sort of hiding place. Once they're discovered, the Madyar drones keep coming over and over again until that Russian soldier is eliminated. On November 11th, Sensor.net reported on this new approach to taking on Russia's Pokrovsk infiltrators using an example that perfectly illustrates what the Madyar Birds are now doing. It published an 87-second video, parts of which cannot be shared on this channel, that shows precisely what the Madyar Birds are doing. The video starts with footage of a single Russian soldier marching through woodland near Pokrovsk. Presumably, being observed by a Ukrainian drone, that soldier finds what appears to be the ruined remains of previously destroyed Russian equipment. The perfect place to hide, the soldier may think. Little did he know that the Madyar Birds already had him in their sights. The rest of the footage shows what the Madyar drone operators did next. Drone after drone attacks the Russian soldier's hiding place. Finally, one of those drones finds the soldier and zeroes in. We can't show you the aftermath. What we can confidently tell you is that the Madyar strike was successful and another Russian soldier was eliminated. This is something that Russia never expected. Its solo operators are no longer safe because they pose less of a threat than the soldiers working as part of larger units. The Madyar Birds are hunting down and eliminating any Russian soldier they see, and the results speak for themselves. Having already taken out over 8,000 Russian soldiers in October, the Madyar Birds are adding to their numbers, as Euromaidan Press reports. With just one clip showing 39 Russian soldiers, 6 motorcycles and a quad bike destroyed, infiltrators hunted day and night, and even soldiers hiding under rubble or inside garages found and neutralized, the outlet says. Ukraine is sending a message to Russia with this Madyar Birds deployment. Southern Pokrovsk is far from safe. The Madyar Birds have turned the entire region of the city into a kill zone where anything that moves is targeted. Hiding doesn't help. Madyar drones are too nimble, too accurate, and too numerous. Another kill zone has been created, and according to Politico in a November 18th article, these kinds of drone-infested regions have become a key part of Ukraine's defensive strategy against Russia in Pokrovsk and elsewhere. The outlet says that the World War I-style trench warfare seen earlier in the Ukraine war has been replaced by kill zones, full of drones, that have made the front lines more fluid than ever. These zones make it difficult to determine advances, especially with Russia's infiltration strategy. As we saw in the Sensor.net video, Russian soldiers can often make progress if they manage to stay out of the sights of Ukraine's drones. However, this is never true progress, as these soldiers are usually found and eliminated thanks to the sheer volume of drones patrolling the kill zones that Ukraine is creating. The skies over battlefields are now blackened by drones, Politico reports. Some carry cameras and thermal detectors, and others are equipped with bombs and guns. Some merely lie on the ground beside paths and roads until stirred to life by a passing soldier or vehicle. These kill zones now often stretch up to 20 kilometers or about 12 miles from the fractured front lines, and they create a ton of problems for Russia's infiltrators. For example, a Russian soldier who is found and wounded by Ukraine's drones will rarely be evacuated. How can they be? The Russian forces know that Ukrainian drone operators will maintain eyes on the wounded soldier, just waiting for any Russians who are foolhardy enough to attempt an evacuation. And when that attempt is made, that's another Russian troop down. Russia's forces are dying of wounds they might have otherwise survived. These types of zones are the reason why around 100 Russian soldiers are dying daily in Pokrovsk. This is the new way of war. The creation of drone-infested hellscapes that deliver the brutality that Russia has exhibited since Putin launched his Ukraine invasion right back to the Russian forces. There is no room for mercy in the kill zones that Ukraine has created. And the Madyar Birds are the perfect drone operators for the ruthless job Zelenskyy and Syrskyi have asked them to carry out in southern Pokrovsk. But they're not the only drone operators working in the city. As the Madyar Birds infest southern Pokrovsk with their drones, Ukraine's main intelligence directorate, or HUR, has deployed its own elite drone pilots to take the fight to Russia. As the Madyar Birds are creating a near-impenetrable kill zone in South Pokrovsk, these HUR operatives turn their attention to the city itself. HUR is looking for isolated groups of Russian soldiers who have already made it into Pokrovsk, and the balance of battle has been altered ever since HUR took to the field, Euromaidan Press reports. We know for certain that the often secretive HUR is operating in Pokrovsk. On November 1st, United 24 media reported that Zelenskyy had confirmed the entry of this elite special operations unit and its drone pilots. Zelenskyy said that HUR's airborne forces were active and that a complex operation is underway to eliminate and push out Russian forces from the city. Euromaidan Press has a few details about what that complex operation may be, and it seems that HUR has been tasked with a similar seek and destroy directive as the Madyar Birds, only focused on the Russian soldiers that are using Pokrovsk's ruined buildings as hiding places. The HUR drone operator's weapon of choice is first-person view or FPV drones equipped with fiber optics that allow them to overcome Russia's electronic warfare countermeasures. Attached to thin cables that can often stretch for several miles, these types of drones can deliver real-time, high-definition feeds of what they see on the battlefield. Due to the cables to which they're tethered, these drones can also fly regardless of the weather, and they're far less vulnerable to jamming or similar countermeasures. One FPV fiber optic drone is lethal. Hordes of them, unleashed on the Russian soldiers inside Pokrovsk as part of a systematic elimination campaign, are destructive to a level that Russia may have not seen before. HUR's one-month numbers tell the story. Ukraine's special forces managed to take out 1,500 Russian soldiers inside Pokrovsk and on the immediate outskirts of the city, in addition to devastating the equipment that Russia has sent to enable its assaults on Pokrovsk. Predominantly using FPV fiber optic drones, HUR has destroyed 18 electronic warfare and air defense assets, 39 artillery systems, 20 tanks, 62 armored vehicles, and over 500 other vehicles, including Russian supply trucks, motorbikes, and cars. Several ammunition dumps and fuel storage points have also fallen victim to HUR's precise and lethal strikes, Euromaidan Press reports. These are impressive numbers. They're made even more impressive when you remember the fact that Russia isn't launching massive mechanized assaults against Pokrovsk. It's sending infiltrators, and when it does send armor, that armor is usually arriving in small amounts. We provided more details in a recent video covering how Russia is running out of tanks. There's nothing that Putin can do to stop that particular rot, and you'll understand why if you check out the video. HUR's numbers show us that whenever Russia does risk sending one of its tanks or other pieces of armor, it's being taken out before it has a chance to have any sort of real effect on the Pokrovsk battlefield. Zelenskyy is delighted at what Ukraine's drone operators have achieved in Pokrovsk. Euromaidan Press says that Ukraine's president has returned to the embattled region to congratulate Ukraine's Madyar Birds, HUR drone pilots, and other elite units. Awards have been handed out. Conversations have been held to cover what needs to be done next, and if Zelenskyy is to be believed, Russia has made no meaningful progress in Pokrovsk during the last few days of November, even though the scale of Russian assaults has intensified. Medusa backs this point in a November 19th battlefield update where it says that Russia still hasn't fully encircled Pokrovsk, despite having claimed to have done so weeks ago. Ukraine still controls Rashina, which allows them to block attempts that Russian forces might make to enter Pokrovsk from the west. Ukraine also controls the main entrance points into Pokrovsk, in addition to the road that links Pokrovsk to Dnipro, Medusa adds. Ukraine's defense of Pokrovsk is going strong, but that doesn't mean the city is safe from Russia's rampaging forces. Zelenskyy himself has stressed this fact, Euromaidan Press states. The Ukrainian president points out that a third of all the frontline clashes in the war today occur in or around Pokrovsk. Russia has also upped its glide bomb intensity, focusing around half of these dangerous aerial munitions on Pokrovsk. Early November saw Russia's single-day volume of assaults rise to around 100, which is a number of daily assaults on Pokrovsk that has only been surpassed on 2 other days in 2025. Pokrovsk is still under intense attack. Ukraine is committed to keeping hold of the city for as long as possible, as the Kyiv Independent reported Zelenskyy is stating on November 13th. There is no talk of Russian control over the city of Pokrovsk or the operational encirclement of the Defense Forces of Ukraine group, Zelenskyy declared in a Telegram post. Stabilizing the situation depends largely on effective coordination between command bodies and units operating in the area. That coordination appears to be in place if the recent exploits of the Madyar Birds and HUR are anything to go by. Ukraine continues to hold the line and has even managed to maintain supply and evacuation routes in and out of the city. That simple fact deals another blow to the Russian narrative that Pokrovsk is encircled and about to fall. The servicemen of the Defense Forces of Ukraine are doing everything to prevent the enemy from moving and entrenching, Zelenskyy concluded. As brave as this defense is, there is no guarantee that Ukraine's forces will be able to hold on in Pokrovsk. Part of the reason is due to the sheer number of soldiers that Putin has committed to taking the vital city. Reuters says that Russia has amassed up to 150,000 soldiers to conduct a final push to take Pokrovsk, and Putin wants the city to fall before the freezing winter weather sets in and makes future assaults more difficult to pull off. Time is running out if a winter victory is Putin's goal, though Russia has recorded some advances. On November 18th, the Kyiv Independent reported that Russian soldiers have been spotted north of Pokrovsk. Ukraine will likely try to eliminate these would-be invaders, just as they did the Russian soldiers to Pokrovsk south and inside the city itself. As it sees its infiltration tactics fail to make the desired headway, Russia is resorting to much dirtier strategies in Pokrovsk, and these dirty tactics may be enough to slow down Ukraine's takedowns of Russia's Pokrovsk infiltrators. On November 18th, United 24 media reported on claims made by the Secret Service of Ukraine, or SBU, that Russian infiltrators inside Pokrovsk have started using human shields to protect themselves. Those soldiers are snatching up the few civilians that remain in the city, with one incident seeing the Russian forces capture a man, a woman, and a 13-year-old child. The SBU says that these civilians were then ordered to walk ahead of the Russian occupiers as soldiers cleared buildings. The use of civilians in this way is a direct violation of Article 28 of the Geneva Convention, which protects civilians during war, the SBU rightly states. Putin likely doesn't care. A day later, the Kyiv Independent reported that Russia's soldiers have also started disguising themselves as civilians inside Pokrovsk. They shed their armor and identifying clothing, often only being identifiable by the rifles that they carry, assuming they don't ditch their weapons. Again, this is another war crime, as Russia is trying to force Ukraine into making the dreadful mistake of killing its own people to stop the Russian infiltration. Russia having to resort to these types of desperate tactics shows us that Putin's push for Pokrovsk isn't going as well as he expected it to go. There is no domination by Russia, no encirclement. Instead, Ukraine has created kill zones that are shredding Russia's soldiers apart. HUR is hunting down any Russians inside Pokrovsk, taking them and their equipment out with their FPV drones. And though Pokrovsk is still under dire threat, it's looking less likely that the city will fall by winter, even as Russia's soldiers commit war crimes to make their leader's vision a reality. Ukraine may not be falling for Russia's new tactic of using Pokrovsk's civilians against it, but elsewhere in the Donetsk region, Ukraine has come up with a bold new strategy that sees it taking out the country's own energy infrastructure to hurt Russia. Ukraine has cut the power in occupied Donetsk with a series of strikes that plunged the Russian forces occupying the region into darkness. Find out more in our video, and remember to subscribe to The Military Show for more coverage of the situation in Pokrovsk. And thank you as always for watching.